want to join in later, that's totally cool too.
Awesome.
Cool. You want to start?
Yeah, well, it's recording now. Great. All right, so I guess thanks to start with for coming out tonight, guys, and joining us. Hopefully we can answer a bunch of questions. My name's Eric, and do you want to introduce yourself, I guess?
Yeah, so once again, thanks for coming out, guys. My name's Jeff. We're both in third year iBioMed at Mechatronics. And so hopefully we can give you guys a bit of a sense of what Tron's all about and maybe help you guys make a more informed decision. So kind of the breakdown for this, I know a lot of you are probably coming from the software live stream. We're just going to kind of do 30 minutes free-flowing, just kind of talking about Tron and our experiences, and then we'll get into kind of a Q&A section in the latter half. Probably won't last 30 minutes, but we'll see.
Yeah.
So do you want to talk a little bit about sort of your co-op experiences, Eric, and sort of what your overall thoughts on Tron are?
Sure. Well, the first co-op I had actually last year was more electrical based, but I guess starting off with my thoughts on Tron and what I've had really as an experience over the past 2 years, it's been very diverse, as many of you guys know. You get hands-on experience with software and electrical, working with hardware, and you get some experience in mechanical as well, especially in third year. Jeff and I are both taking 2 mechanical courses, and we've taken 1 as well in the previous semester. So I'd say it's very comprehensive, as it gives you good understanding of electrical systems, how to write software. We've actually taken a software development course this past semester, sorry. And so my first co-op was out in Stony Creek, and it was an electrical co-op, and we were working on control boxes. And a lot of it was reading electrical schematics and actually building the hardware for them. And we've taken courses like 2EO3, 2EO4, which is an electrical circuits course. And that really gives you like hands-on experience in lab, building DC, AC, and digital circuits. And a lot of that stuff's like really applicable if you get one of those electrical co-ops. What about you, Jeff?
Yeah, so I guess kind of sharing my experience with Tron, like Eric said, it really is the interconnection between mechanical, electrical, and software. And then as part of Tron, what's really interesting is you get to take courses in all sorts of faculties. So a really good example is we've taken Eng Phys, mechanical, software, computer science. We took statics last semester, which is a general course, but we take it with the materials kids. And then I think we also take one, later down the line with, might be, I want to say we take one with Elec in like 4th or 5th year. But you really get exposure to a lot of the different streams, which we'll kind of go into that, because one of the questions that really comes off of that is, are you too broad? Are you too surface level? So that's kind of something we can get into a little bit later. But talking a little bit more about my experience, in my first year, I worked under Dr. Noseworthy. Some of you might have him as a 1P10 mentor. I worked under him doing MRI research. So I was primarily designing a data acquisition system for the MRI and an eye tracker, both based off Raspberry Pi. My second year, I was working at Shift Inc. / Bestech. So Bestech is a mining consulting firm based out of Sudbury, Ontario. And Shift Inc. is sort of the sister research division. And primarily what I was doing was, the vision for Shift Inc. is a autonomous mining materials management system. So essentially they have these 4-foot by 4-foot by 4-foot cubes. And these cubes are designed to sort of track your materials in the mine, because there's kind of a habit of things like explosives just kind of disappearing. So they're trying to sort of invent that system and have better data monitoring. And part of that was they needed robots to be able to transfer these cubes around the mine, and both down the shaft and within the actual tunnels within the mine. So I was doing a lot of the initial prototyping in terms of that robot. So I was consulting on the mechanical and the electrical of the design, and then I was primarily in charge of writing the software. So in terms of the software, we were using Robot OS. If you ever get a chance to play with it, really, really cool software. It's really easy to kind of stitch together a lot of different components to get your robot to do what you wanted to do. I guess the main things that I did was I wrote a custom PID control algorithm for Arduino to essentially allow you to spin the wheels up to a speed and tune them down without as much jerking and sudden stops. And then I also wrote kind of a QR follower, so you'd essentially show it to QR codes, and then the robot would track you around the office as you walked. And I was in the process of implementing like full autonomous navigation around the office. And then we also worked on like essentially we built this cube that is the same size as the smart cube with like a bunch of cameras around it, and then you would have a turntable in the center, and you put your objects, so like a bolt, a drill, whatever, it would spin it around. You take like 400,000 pictures, and then you'd send them all to AWS to have it all trained and as a machine vision algorithm. So that was primarily Shift, and then this year I'm between two places. So Shift has invited me back to do a lot more work in their electrical and PCB design. Or there's a company down in Burlington called Evertz Engineering, and I guess they do a lot of infrastructure for broadcast, telecom, like internet type stuff. And so I might either be writing some C++ software for their control box, like essentially when you go to a sporting event, there's like 30, 40 cameras. All those cameras have to kind of come into a box and be processed. So I'll either be writing the software for that, or I'll be writing the interface that people use to sort of manage all those video streams. So kind of a variety of different stuff. And I think that is really the key thing about Tron. Is the way that I like to explain it is Tron is the stepping stones to get to where you want to go. So the way that I like to kind of explain this is in Tron, you cover a lot of different things. You get exposure to a ton of different things, and then it's up to you to figure out what you like and sort of go and pursue that. And I think that's why, you see a lot of people, and especially when you talk to people in Tron, you have people working in hardware jobs, you have people working, just pure software web dev type stuff. Other people are doing electrical work. Other people are doing mechanical work. Tron is really that broad exposure to sort of figure out what you like, and then you have to go and sort of pursue that.
Yeah, no, I like what you said about that, Jeff. It really gives you the basis and the understanding to be able to walk into a lot of different spaces and be able to excel. I guess like throughout the past few years, now we've had different events on campus like McMaster Engineering Competition. I know that it CAD Design-a-thon, excuse me. And just through our courses, it's given us the knowledge to be able to excel at those. Like if you guys get the chance, definitely compete in the McMaster Engineering Competition. But it's basically just a 8-hour competition to design a robot, and it's got to work autonomously through a track. But this is just working with Arduino, writing a bit of C++, and prototyping this small robot to complete a challenge. And it's really interesting coming from a Tron perspective to be able to walk in there and then handle like the different branches of the design challenge, whether it's the software side, the hardware side, working with the Arduino, all the different sensors and stuff like that. You get a good understanding of the hardware itself. I know I've also had the chance through Baja as a member of the data acquisition team to work with a lot of different technology on the Baja itself. And coming again from like a Tron background, it's really let me like just have the confidence to like try out the different challenges on the team. Recently, I've gotten to design timing gates just using, again, pressure switches and an Arduino, and just set up some basic timing gates. It just gives you a lot of knowledge to excel. Like we have design projects, I guess, in upper years, which are very hardware based again, and coming in from different streams, it's very challenging to look at them and say, hey, there's this software side of it, as well as the hardware side of it. Like, how do we interface those? And it's kind of a treat having that experience already.
And then kind of building off what you said in terms of, experiences being on sort of extracurricular teams and whatnot, and how, you found that Tron has benefited you. I found very similar with the medical design team. So I primarily do the systems and integration team. So kind of more actuation, electrical software there, but I've also done a lot of work kind of consulting on the mechanical design. And, one of the issues that we've kind of come into recently was we are trying to be able to change the angle of the different valves because we're doing a cardiac function simulator. And so we essentially have these 4 linear actuators that are all mounted. And we realized that for us to be able to change the angle from 0 to 70 was like a 314% increase in length. And so being able to kind of consult on, well, how can we get around that? Is there a way that we can create some type of structure that's going to be able to stretch and still meet all the requirements that we need? So that's where I found Tron to be very valuable, is you can kind of consult on all the different aspects of the team, and you sort of have that overall vision of what this whole thing is supposed to look like. I think one of the questions that most people are probably wondering is kind of, what can you do with a Tron degree? And then personally, where would you like to see yourself go? Like, if you could kind of pick either a company or kind of a job type that you would really want to do as a mechatronics engineer, what would it be?
Yeah. So do you want to take that one first, Jeff?
Yeah, I can kind of lead on that. So I think with a Tron degree, you really can do anything. And I think within Tron, a lot of people tend to subspecialize. So personally, I consider myself a Tron guy, but also very much a software guy. A lot of the positions that I've worked have involved quite a bit of software, and a lot of the projects and stuff that I do on the side tend to be software based. So everyone tends to kind of subspecialize, but I've approached companies that do only mechanical, only electrical, only software, people that do a combination of all three. Personally, I really want to work in kind of medical robotics. I think there's a lot of interesting tech there. In particular, my interest is exosuits. So I've sent off applications to Rewalk Robotics, which is a kind of biomedical company, and they do a full body exosuit for people that have spinal injuries to allow them to walk again. And then the other place that I applied to, that personally, if I'm going to do a 16-month co-op, I really want to go to, it's called ExoBionics. It's a company out of the States. And they have a medical division, which is really interesting, but I actually really like their practical stuff. So what they have is an upper torso exosuit that, so essentially when you're building a car, you have to put corrosion resistance on the bottom. And the problem is you have to maintain like a 90-degree angle with your elbow to apply that coating consistently. So it's really hard on your shoulder. So this actual exosuit like relieves all of that pressure. And so I think doing sort of that work, that kind of industrial work, would also be really interesting.
No, yeah, that sounds very interesting for sure. And I know like having this undergrad degree in Tron and iBio is a very unique position, and it sets you up very well to work hopefully on medical tech. And myself, I'd like to see myself go and work with prosthetics, specifically dynamic prosthetics, so kind of up the same stream there. As far as companies, you can really, like, if you take a good look, you can find this kind of technology being applied in a very diverse market. I know recently I saw Burton come out with a new binding specifically designed for amputees who had a prosthetic leg, and that's just something like right up my alley. I know I love snowboarding a lot, and so I definitely sent out an application this summer to work at Burton specifically on that project. But yeah, just working with like the hardware involved in designing a dynamic prosthetic would be definitely an interesting goal of mine. Where does this put us about? Sorry, go on.
Well, here, I actually just want to share something in the chat, kind of for everybody. So when I was looking for exosuit companies, this was the first place that I went to. And it's a list of quite a few different companies. Some of these are closed, not all these are open. This list is about 5 years old. So some of these are much more established, but it kind of gives you a sense of what people are working on. And there's a few Canadian companies in here, which is really interesting. So if anyone ever wants to have a look at that, there's a lot of companies doing interesting stuff, and especially if you just search like exosuit company, you'll get like just tons of results on Google just about people doing different things, and it's a really exciting space. So I guess we should start kind of addressing the big questions that a lot of people have about Tron, because one of the main concerns that a lot of people tend to have is that Tron is too broad, and that it's kind of disorganized. So do you want to speak on that?
Yeah, I guess maybe we can break that down into two individual questions, but first off, yeah, you have to acknowledge going into Tron, it's a very broad, very diverse agenda that they have. It's very laid out. It's covering at least 4 streams, and to have iBio involved in it too. You got to be excited about it, I guess, if you're gonna go into it. It gives you a chance to tackle, like we've named, electrical, software, and hardware. Sorry, mechanical as well. So I think it's important to know that the courses that you're taking are their own. So we do take like design elements, measurements, which are mechanical courses. We take specific courses for electrical, like the digital and analog circuits courses, and we have our own software courses. So they do give us a good understanding of the individual streams, but you have to understand that you're taking them all at once. So you have to manage that workload, which is challenging at times, but it's always fun to have that diverse learning at the same time. What about you, Jeff?
Yeah, I would say when you're looking at Tron as a stream, you have to realize that you might have 2 courses that are similar, and that's probably going to be it when you're in iBioTron. I mean, if we look at this semester, there's design elements and measurements, and those are probably the only 2 courses that I have that are kind of related, because then it's critical appraisal, 3PO4, scientific computation, and I have something else. But either way, it's all entirely different, and so that constant changing of, I guess, scope, or more so specialization, can be really challenging. Especially when you're doing like software, electrical, mechanical, sometimes it's really hard to sort of shift your perspective from sort of one space to the other. And that's just one of the inherent sort of flaws in taking this type of degree, in that, yes, because you are sort of that master of integration, of putting all these things together, you have to be able to do all these things. And so, you are going to be exposed to a lot of different things, and that shifting can be difficult. And then talking in terms of the disorganization, so I guess for a bit of context, Tron has been undergoing a restructuring, and sort of we're kind of the first year through that. So previous to us, McMaster Tron was known for having a lot of software courses. I believe the ratio was something like 55% software, and then like a little bit of mechanical, and the rest was electrical. And so it was primarily software based. And so what they've done in these, especially in our year and sort of the years behind us, is they are adding more mechanical courses, and they're trying to split it out to kind of an even third for each discipline. But that means that it's kind of the same thing when you signed up for iBioMed. You're signing up to sort of a new program. Even though you guys have had 2 years go through it before you, every year they almost entirely change the courses. is because they're still trying to figure it out. And so there is quite a bit of that in Tron of, trying to figure things out. How does this look? And so you just have to kind of go with the flow in that respect and sort of give them the valuable feedback and do the best you can with it. But I would say that McMaster Tron is probably where EngFizz was a few years back. So there was a period of time before EngFizz underwent like a big restructuring where it was kind of looked down upon as a stream at Mac. And then EngFizz pretty much redid their entire courses, and that's why, and like the EngFizz that you see now is that restructured EngFizz. It's good, it's highly praised. And so Tron is undergoing that revision at the moment, and you guys would be coming in further into that revision than we did.
Yeah, no, I think you said it well there. It's like just like iBio's getting better every year. It's getting more organized than it was for us, and it'll be more organized for next year's group of engineers. So will Tron, and I think that's just the way we got to look at it. Is it's going to get better, and by the time you guys are now in third year, it'll be even more organized. And just to take a step back, I guess, to how diverse our courses are. I think the exciting thing, and you mentioned it there, Jeff, was being able to draw those connections. So having that broad perspective, walking into a mechanical course or an electrical course, and drawing the connections between the two is something exciting. And it's prevalent, I guess, in our courses, I'd like to say. And yeah, that's all that I wanted to mention, is that even though we do have a very broad course load, there are connections, and it's not just like you're on an island for each course. There are bridges, I guess. So.
And then I guess I'm just kind of going through our list of questions here. How project-based is Mechatronics?
Okay. Yeah. I'd start by saying yes, it's very project-based, but again, it's gonna be course dependent. So iBio has its own projects that we got into this year in 3P04, which were pretty exciting until they got cut off. But we got to design health technology to tackle any one of like 6 different projects. But specifically Tron Stream, I guess you guys are more interested in. We have a course called software development, which I already mentioned, and that was just this past semester where we got to design the hardware and the software involved in making a pacemaker. I don't know if you want to talk about that project a bit, Jeff, or?
Yeah, so I guess talking about that project, so that was paired with kids in computer and ECE. So it was iBiotrons, ECE, regular trons, and people that were in computer eng, all sort of working on this pacemaker project. And essentially most teams ended up splitting up into either a hardware side team, which was using MATLAB Simulink to design the functions of the pacemaker, or more so the front end team that was managing the user logins, sort of, all of that HMI and whatnot. And then I guess talking about a lot of the other project-based courses, Tron really tends to pick up as you go on. So a lot of the labs and whatnot that you do in Tron are pretty hands-on, but when you actually start getting to your embedded programming and your like robotics design and the courses that we haven't hit yet, those are the courses that we're going to be hitting a lot in 4th and 5th year. But based off talking to other people in Tron, like those are very hands-on, very project-based courses.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I guess if you guys are going in or deciding to go into Tron, you can look forward to the digital and analog circuits course, which is just it's 2E04, but you get to build circuits like every week, whether they're with chips or just with power sources, like it's a DC or AC circuit. But it's a fun and challenging lab that you guys will get to work on. And it's way different from looking at a schematic to actually building the circuit in lab and testing it, whether or not the theoretical matches the physical. And it's a good hands-on experience. Jonathan?
So we have a question in the chat. How would you say Tron differs from Elec specifically?
Okay.
And also, we'll start opening it up to other questions if people want to post other ones in the chat and whatnot.
Yeah.
Just because we're getting near kind of that time.
Yeah, 30 minute. Well, I don't know. Can you speak specifically to electrical? Because I know we get to take some hands-on courses in electrical, but we also have those software courses like we talked about, software development, and we also take a data structure and algorithm course, which is very software based, and the other mechanical courses that we already talked about. But I don't know if you could talk, Jeff, about how specific it is different, or how specifically it's different.
Yeah, so I guess the first point is you're not going to hit a lot of those mechanical courses. So that's kind of the first thing. In terms of software, you do hit some software in elec. Specifically, the one you've probably heard about that everybody absolutely loves is the C and Java course. In Tron, we do a bit more software than that. So we do a dedicated Intro to C course, and then we do a Data Structures and Algorithms course. And then there's some more embedded programming and whatnot that will kind of happen in later years. And then talking about the electrical work specifically, Mechatronics is about the usage and the application of tools in comparison to electrical, which is much more about the theory and explanations behind a lot of things. So my best example of this is an electrical engineer cares about what a resistor is, how it works, how it's built, how it does everything. Mechatronics engineer cares about how you use that resistor in a circuit. And so that's really the difference between Tron and then electrical and mechanical software. Is Tron is much more application based, a lot more of here's a tool, how are you going to use it, in comparison to these other streams, which will dive a lot more into sort of the theory and the thinking behind a lot of these different tools. So the next question, so hopefully that kind of gives a little bit of perspective. The next question that we have is, how much CAD do you get to do?
Right. So I guess that that's up to you. You always have access to the CAD software. I'm trying to think specifically courses that we're taking that have CAD involved. Myself, as I mentioned, I'm on Baja, so I can speak to that. Joining clubs and teams is the best way to, well, no matter what stream you are, it's the best way to get hands-on experience. So myself, I'm interested in CAD using Autodesk Inventor. So through Baja, I get to design parts on CAD and use their 3D printers as well. But Jeff, do you know of any courses that we're taking specifically? Maybe stream specific?
I would say that design elements, you definitely could have used CAD software. But I think this is an issue that you hit a lot with mechanical as a stream as well. With mechanical as a stream, you actually don't do tons of CAD. I mean, yes, it comes up and whatnot, but it's not as much as you would think. It's not as much if you were, you know, say becoming a design technician or something, and where a lot of your course load is CAD. CAD is kind of a skill that you have to hone on your own time or as part of co-ops. It really doesn't come up that much in courses, and even in mechanical, it doesn't come up all that much in courses from what I've heard. Mm-hmm. In terms of previous coding experience, how much coding experience did you have before you started university and probably before starting Tron?
Yeah, that's a common question everyone's, no matter what your coding level is concerned with. Before university, I hadn't coded at all, I can be honest. Maybe like here and there once, but no, I hadn't. And first year was a great opportunity to get exposed to like a whole bunch of them. Python was the main one that I learned personally, and then MATLAB, you learn a bit in math, but you know, everyone kind of sloughs that one. So I would say going into Tron, you don't necessarily need a strong coding base. It always helps, but I'd say they still teach you from a fairly rudimentary level, and I think that's fair to say. Like, it's anything else, there's a learning curve involved, but I would not say that there's any like entry level requirement. As long as you enjoy it and it's something you'll be interested in doing in some aspect, I'd say you're a good fit. What about you, Jeff? How how was your level of coding, or how did you find it in
So
Toronto?
I had done no coding before coming to university, same as you. I ended up really liking coding in first year there, and so I, actually spent quite a bit of time sort of on my own, like figuring it out and learning a lot more about it. And then through my co-ops and everything else, I developed a lot of coding experience. So I would say going into Tron, I was probably more advanced than quite a few people in terms of coding knowledge. Um, but a lot of the stuff that they're teaching is not that. It comes down to a lot more theory and a lot more. It doesn't really test you on how good of a coder you are, if that makes any sense. Like a lot of your courses don't actually involve you writing large pieces of software and thinking about efficiency and how you do things and whatnot. So I wouldn't be too concerned if you don't have a ton of experience in coding. Um, because again, they do teach kind of from that intro level, and you know, not all the teaching is super kind of write this piece of super complex software. That doesn't really come up. Um, so the next one that we have is, you mentioned that people from Tron can end up at jobs that are solely software, mechanical, or electrical. Do you find that you are at a disadvantage applying for these jobs compared to those who specialize in them?
That's a great question. I'd say no. There's always a common feeling for myself when I'm applying to jobs. It's a tricky process, and you're always going to feel like there might be a better applicant out there. But I'd definitely say no. The things that co-op or recruiters are looking for aren't the courses you've taken. They'd be the skills that you've developed and the extracurriculars you've done, like those clubs and teams. Like, I'm certain, like 9 times out of 10, my friends and myself who have secured co-ops, it's not because of the stream we're in to a certain extent, but it's those extracurriculars, being on EcoCar, being on Medical Makers, I believe, Baja, any of those things where you learn so much more, and those upper year students on those teams can teach you so much more. It's important, I guess, to apply to jobs that are up your alley, that you have like a good feel for, like something that's in your wheelhouse. But again, they're going to teach you, co-ops are going to teach you like majority of the knowledge that you're going to use at that job. They just want to make sure you're a student that can learn. What about you, Jeff? What would you say?
I think this really cycles back to that kind of initial point we made of Tron is the stepping stones to what you want to do. So one of the really good examples I have of this is I was applying to a bunch of mechanical jobs, and one of the things they kept asking for was GD&T. So essentially general dimensioning and tolerancing and sort of understanding that. We touch it a bit in our courses, but we don't really go into it. I think it's third year mechanical where they really, like regular mechanical, where they start to go into that. But I went on my own. I ended up reading, a little bit about it to make sure that if I was asked interview questions, I could apply it. I also went back, I pulled up some of my old CAD models and, did appropriate GD&T to be able to say, yes, I know how to do this. And so it's, again, Tron will give you that base in a lot of things, but there might be something in electrical, in mechanical, in software that you don't know. And that's where, because you've been more abroad, you have to sort of take it upon yourself to go and learn that skill. But it also means that you can apply to 3 times as many jobs as everybody else, because some person in software is probably not going to be applying to a mechanical or an electrical job. And it's pretty rare that you ever see a mechanical guy apply to an electrical job or a software job. So it gives you more opportunities for jobs. And, sometimes you might lack the knowledge, but that's where you have to kind of go out and find that knowledge yourself.
Yeah, no, I think it's an awesome thing to have that knowledge of those different disciplines, because then once you're in a position, say it's an electrical job, like my co-op with Shaw Max, it was mainly electrical, but there was some mechanical design in those electrical boxes. So then I got to step up and I got to do some hands-on work designing it in Autodesk, some parts of it and then actually manufacturing them myself. So using the machines and like using the presses and the mills in their shop. So I'd say it's like a great opportunity to diversify, get more experience in a broader field. But yeah.
Yeah, and speaking to that as well, like when I was doing at Shift, I was doing PCB design on a few things. And so I got to consult on the electrical schematics, and then I went to the mechanical designer and said, okay, these are all the things that I need. And I then got to consult on the mechanical design of the board, or as to where, you know, it needed to sit and the physical placements of things like the screw heads and everything else. And then I got to actually build the board. Right, so it was really interesting getting to be involved in all those different aspects. So another question that came up is subspecialization. So is that kind of natural with the way the program is set up, or does it end up kind of being on your own time through your clubs, projects, co-ops?
So subspecialize. I'd say the courses, they lead you into it, and they do you the honor of showing you and allowing you to find what you're most interested in. So it gives you that exposure. But I'd say that a large bulk of it is, and a large bulk of learning is going to be on your own at university, in my own experience. So being able to go in to those projects with a wider breadth of knowledge gives you the advantage. But yeah, no, I'd say the subspecialization is mostly on your own time, in my experience. What about you, Jeff?
Yeah, I would say that it's very similar in the sense that your courses will give you a feel for what you like, and then you have to kind of find within that where you want to end up. Now, when we're talking about subspecializing, we're not really talking about turning into a mechanical engineer, turning into an electrical engineer, and that becoming your full-time thing. It's more sort of where does your niche lie? So for me, a lot of my personal projects, a lot of my co-ops have been very software based. And so naturally, I tend to gravitate towards software teams where I will look to integrate the mechanical and the electrical. Versus I know other people that, you know, their primary thing is electrical work, but they can write, you know, embedded code or consult on it if need be, or they can kind of consult on the mechanical design.
Yeah.
I think what's important to kind of remember about Tron is people in Tron usually end up being some type of lead within the team. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean management, that doesn't mean anything else, but naturally, your job is always a mix of doing new things, but really stitching things together. You know, how are you going to stitch together or all these different components of whatever project it is? And so you tend to end up being sort of in charge and guiding everybody else in what they do. But to be able to do that, you have to have knowledge of everything else.
Yeah, for sure. I don't know if I can talk to that for a second, but I like, you really do, you step into a leadership role when you have that ability to connect different members on a team. Both me and Jeff were at OEC for different competitions. Sorry, OEC is the Ontario Engineering Competition. But in my challenge, like I mentioned, it's similar to McMaster Engineering Competition. We got to design an autonomous robot that it was a scissor lift that had to drive itself through a course and then work as a scissor lift and then continue on to a different part. But that was integrating using sensors, so color sensors, QRD color sensors, weight sensors, and as well as designing the actual physical prototype. So knowing the requirements that the hardware people need and the mechanical people have and being able to mesh those together, you end up taking on a leadership role where you have to communicate to both branches and work as well, somewhere in the middle. So it's a cool opportunity, for sure.
And then another question that we had was, what was the deciding factor for you to choose Tron over software elect mechanical?
Yeah. Well, for starters, I myself was caught right in the middle of the three. Sorry.
So
That's my roommate. Yeah. Sorry.
Okay. Do you want me to take over? Okay, I got you. So for myself, um, really the streams that I was kind of picking between, I was picking between mechanical, electrical, software, eng phys, and Tron. Those are really the five because I knew that, I didn't really want to do chemical, didn't really want to do materials. I just kind of knew that to start out with. And then I started kind of really enjoying coding and whatnot. And then that kind of took mechanical out of the picture because I wanted to still be involved, with coding. And so that kind of left me with my four streams. And then I think what really made my choice was I started looking at what I wanted to do in terms of, projects and where I wanted to end up. And I started to realize that I really wanted to do something in biomed, prosthetics, exosuits. Like I kind of knew that's where I wanted to go. And so that started aligning me a lot more with Tron. And I already had a bit of robotics experience, having been part of my high school's first robotics team. So that's when I started really gravitating towards Tron and Eng Phys. My main reason for eliminating software, personally, was because software is the only engineering stream where you will end up competing with people that are not software engineers. And in Canada, it is sort of a protected term and a protected position. But in, say, not all companies in Canada look for that, and not all places, especially when you start going outside of Canada, like the States and whatnot, where you have people that are just kind of freelance coders and whatnot that are kind of vying for those same positions. People that don't necessarily have the formal education and understanding of sort of the responsibility and the weight that you take on when designing a lot of these different pieces of software. So that's personally what really sort of took me away from software. And so it was between Tron and Eng Phys, because I was talking to Dr. Minnick, love Dr. Minnick. But he was really pushing me to do Tron and then specialize in the to do Eng Phys and specialize in the robotics stream of Eng Phys. But that to me didn't make any sense. If I wanted to do robotics, then I'd just go do Tron. And so that's what kind of made that decision for me.
Yeah, no, you said that well. Those are a lot of good points to consider when you're trying to figure out what stream you're going into. And I had a similar feeling when I was deciding between the three. Specifically, like when I was thinking of mechanical, which was a huge interest for me coming into first year, I felt that it kind of left out that software aspect that I knew I'd want going forward. And like it just sounded like such an important part to me to have in my undergrad. And same when I thought of software, like I couldn't leave out the mechanical aspect or that physical aspect. So I felt like Tron meshed those two together nicely, and it still gave me the opportunity to explore both as I found I was interested in them. But yeah, that's how I made my choice.
So we're getting, is there more? Okay, so we're getting down to kind of the last few minutes of the live stream here. If anybody has any other questions that they want to ask, this would be an excellent time. I'll just go to our sort of list of questions, see if there's anything else that we can do to just kind of flesh out the last little bit here.
Yeah, and feel free if you've got a longer question just to turn on your mic and you can voice it.
This is more of a general question that we have here is, if I can only take 2 courses during the summer term, which 2 courses should I take? I'll hop in on this one. Yeah, do math. 100% do math. It's easier in the summer. As someone that did not do well in math first year, or like most people have the math curve where it starts high and kind of goes low. My curve started low and ended up finishing high. So if you have the opportunity, definitely do math over the summer. It's going to be a bit different now because courses are online. I'm not sure how that'll really change things. Um, Hopefully, there'll still be a lot of resources and everything else, and it'll still be a good choice. But normally, I would say definitely do math.
Yeah. Okay. That's a really good suggestion. Jeff, could you give us, I guess, the key points then for mechatronics and why why you took it and why it's a great stream?
Yeah. So, I love Tron because it allows me to lead the different teams that I'm a part of and have a perspective on all the work that's going on and not end up in my own little kind of bubble. A lot of the different engineers that I've worked with, there tends to be a lack of communication. Your mechanical guy has an idea in mind, but it's not quite what the electrical guy has in mind, and it's definitely not what the software guy has in mind. And so there's that disconnect. And as the mechatronics engineer, you are the one kind of stitching those perspectives together and sort of assembling the project. I think it's really good if you are sort of motivated to go out and learn additional skills. Because Tron, like we said before, is very broad. You're covering electrical, software, or mechanical, and biomedical because you are in iBio. You're really covering 4 streams. So you do have a very broad understanding. Some of it goes pretty deep, some of it isn't. So when applying to jobs, you might have to go and learn skills that you didn't learn in class just because it wasn't covered in your course load. But if you're the type of person that is okay with that and, values the perspective that Tron brings, then it's definitely the stream for you. And I think the only other thing that I would really like to add is if you are one of those people that likes the design projects, you like that integration of that hardware and the software and the electrical, and like if 1P10 is the course that you actually like loved in first year, personally 1P10 was actually like my favorite course in first year, and that is an unpopular opinion among some, but I really loved the project based and the integration, everything else with it. So I think if you are one of those people, Tron is a really good fit for you.
Yeah. No, I agree with what you said there, and I think you've wrapped it up nicely. So, if there's any more questions, put them into the chat. I don't know if Andrew wants to hop on here at all.
Yeah, okay, so I'm back. I'm here. I just want to thank you guys for coming. What I encourage you guys to do, and I invite you to leave your contact information. So any of the first years who have any extra questions and they think of them later can reach out to you guys. But yeah, thank you so much for sharing your perspective on Tron. And hopefully students that are watching now and watching online later will really get to take away some things from this info session that then they can use to make a more informed decision. So with that said, I guess we can end this live stream. Thank you everybody for coming. And a reminder that we still have many live streams over the course of the rest of this week. So if there are any other streams that you're interested in, please tune into those as well, because they're sure to have other really awesome reps that are going to share their experiences as well. So thank you guys. Have a great night and good luck on your midterm tomorrow.